Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. I had a childhood friend who turned my life into a living nightmare, and I'm just going to call him R. We met at primary school, and we got on well straight from the get-go. We ended up going to the same middle school and high school. It was great because we both got along very well. We used to walk home together, and sometimes we went to school together in the mornings. My parents didn't even complain when I had him over. We weren't dating or anything, but I guess that it could have looked like we were. I didn't see many other girl-boyfriend combos at my school, and he was to me a very good friend. Because he was such a good friend, I told him when I entered into a relationship with another boy. I was nervous of telling him. I was thinking, will he make fun of me or will he support me? How is this one going to play out? I told him, and initially, he didn't react much, but later that day at lunch, he punched through a window. I felt awful, but I didn't know if he did that entirely because of me. It was after that point that R's behavior began to drastically change. He became very clingy and needy. He would stick by my side every break we had between classes. He would wait for me in the morning and after school, and every night he wanted to come to my house. It wasn't just in person. He was bombarding me with emails, texts, and calls every single day. If I didn't reply, he would send even more. I am older now, and I can see how naive I was being every time I replied to him. I should have just cut ties. Well, that's hindsight for you. I shouldn't have given him the oxygen that he needed to continue. Things started to get pretty creepy when I would wake up and I would see him right outside our house. I took the advice of some of my female friends and I confronted him one morning. I said to him, "Hey, you know I said I had a boyfriend, right? So maybe we should keep a little distance between us." And the second that I said that to him, he flipped out. "Why? I am the one who has been with you this entire time. I understand you way more than he does, and I appreciate you more. So why him? Why not me?" Then he turned to try and put his arms around me, but I saw it coming in the nick of time. After that, he would appear whenever my boyfriend and I went out on dates, and sometimes it felt like he would try to sabotage them. Whenever my boyfriend would come over, he would turn up at my house and start ringing the doorbell. I didn't know how to deal with someone like that at that age. He was relentless. I swear, one time when my parents were out and it was just me and my boyfriend, R tried to break in. I heard several thuds and bangs coming from the front door. He would do other things too. He started spreading lies, specifically ones about my boyfriend at school, and it seemed like he was hell-bent on breaking our relationship. Things went downhill for R. He stopped going to school so much when he realized that he wasn't going to break us up. And apparently, he gave up on going to college too. He still harassed me though, only digitally. I quickly learned to block all unusual friend requests and all the weird emails. I heard a rumor before I left my hometown for college that he wound up in a mental asylum. I can't put much faith in that rumor though. I hope that isn't the case because even though he turned into a crazed stalker of a friend, he was at one point my best friend. After graduation, I rented an apartment with a boyfriend that I made at school, and I still live with him. I really don't know what happened to R, but I often think to myself that he's still out there. I try not to share too much personal information online. He was bad as a teenager, and he could be worse. as an adult. When I was at university, I had a good friend who was really good looking, but she never had a boyfriend or showed any interest in men. I was very curious about this, so I asked her the reason why I never saw her with a boyfriend. She said there was 2 reasons why. She told me that she had a boyfriend in high school who became obsessed with her, and when she couldn't take it any longer, she spoke to him about mutually ending the relationship. But he exploded with rage and then attacked her. And the second reason was, before university, she commuted to school on the train. One day, she found something in her bag, a mysterious sealed envelope. She guessed that someone slipped it in her bag on board of the crowded train. The letter was very simple. It only had a few words. Love at first sight. It was a creepy kind of love letter. It wasn't addressed to her, and it didn't have her name written on the envelope, and it really creeped her out. Thereafter, she found a new letter in her bag each week. She said that she did nothing to encourage these letters. Since this freaked her out, she decided to quit traveling to school on the train. A few days after she stopped commuting, she received a phone call from a number that she didn't recognize. Oh God, she thought. This is freaky. She didn't answer the call but saved the number as Stalker. A few days passed. She set up an answer phone service to see if the stalker would leave a message, and she was surprised to find that they did. Her hands were shaking as she listened to the message. Why did you go away? Why did you leave me? She said that she began to develop a fear of leaving the house and then a fear of men. It took her years to recover from the fear instilled in her from not only her ex-boyfriend, but the train stalker too. And once she had her confidence back, she attended university. I wanted to help her get a sense of trust in men again, as there are so many good men out there. I knew that I was meddling, but I wanted to help. So I thought that I would invite her to a party with male and females attending. I floated the idea to her, and she reluctantly accepted. The day of the party arrived. I invited some of my best friends and male friends that I trusted. I warned them all that my friend was nervous and asked them to be on their best behavior. My friends understood and promised to make the atmosphere great for the party. The party was held by our college mentor, and I was so proud of her because she spoke to a man for the first time in a long while. They had a lengthy conversation, which was really good to see. The guy she spoke to had the exact same taste in music and the movies as she did, to the point where they had the same favorite song. They even came from the same area. They could have talked all night because they had so much in common, and I felt like it was fate that brought these two together. But when the party was over, he asked for her contact information. I knew this would be a big step for her, and I could tell that she was happy with this, but she was too shy to show it. She said to me after the party on the way home, "I'm so happy. I can fall in love like anyone else now." And I was so happy for her, and I felt just as excited as she did. A couple days later, she received an email from him. She was pleased, as you can imagine, and I respected him for taking things slowly. After about a week of emailing, she came running into my room to tell me that he had invited her on a date. The day of the date arrived. My friend didn't want to be late, so she left her home in plenty of time. He sent an email stating, "I'll be there shortly. I'll let you know when I arrive." And my friend decided to wait in a cafe for him. The cafe was crowded, so she emailed him with her number and asked him to call her when he got there. And about 15 minutes passed and her phone rang. It's him, she thought gleefully as she pulled out her phone. Stalker was displayed on the screen. Her heartbeat rose. Old familiar thoughts of fear crept forward from the back of her mind. She calmed herself and told herself that, "I'm okay. My boyfriend is coming, and I will be safe." And she decided to be brave and answer the phone. "Hello?" she said. "Hi, I'm here. Where are you?" It was the voice of the man that she had met at the party, her new boyfriend. There was no mistake. He must have been the one who put the letters in her bag on the train. She called me as she was leaving, and all she said was, "I have no luck with men." She escaped that letter stalker with the help of her friends and colleagues, and I don't know what they did, but they made him back off. I am shocked and somewhat in awe at the stalker's fascination and persistence with my friend. I wish that he had just left her alone. This happened when I was in my 3rd year of high school. I went with my family to a huge mall in the neighboring town. I went off to look around by myself, and I first went to the stationery department. I was enjoying myself looking at all the display cases and the new products. Then, on my left, a person approached. I moved in closer to the shelves to allow this person to pass. I am sure that you have all been in this situation. It's really just common courtesy, isn't it? But he didn't pass. I felt something bump into my back. It was him. Then he passed by. I knew I gave him enough space to pass without touching me. So why did he do that? I didn't really understand at that age, but I guess I do now. Either way, I felt pretty weird about it, so I just went to look at the CDs. I held the new CD by one of my favorite artists in my hand. As I was checking the track list, after a little while, I sensed a presence again. There was a guy to the other side of the CD rack facing me. You know those display cases? They are usually in music stores or video stores. And I thought the guy was just looking at the displays on the other side of the rack. He didn't move at all though. So, after a while, I looked up and that's when I realized that he was just staring at me. Even when our eyes met, he didn't look away. He didn't even blink. I couldn't maintain eye contact with this guy, and he was seriously weirding me out. My heart started to beat faster. What the hell are you doing? Why are you just staring at me? I couldn't bear it anymore. I had to move away. I pretended to look for another CD. I didn't want him to think that he or his creepy behavior had affected me. And after a while, he came over again and stood close by again. And there he was, staring. In that moment, I realized that he must have been the same guy who nudged into me in the stationery aisle. He was wearing the same kind of clothes, and it was clear that he was following me. I felt so gross. I remember standing by the CDs and shuddering. I didn't know what to do, but I thought that if I ran for it, this guy would run after me. So I decided to leave as calmly and quietly as I could. I kept going for a while and I didn't hear anyone following me. I did not dare to look over my shoulder to check. But still, as I continued to walk through the store, I didn't get the feeling that I was being followed. What was this? Did I make a mistake? Was this all a misunderstanding? I started to feel that it was all my fault. I was going up the escalator in search of my family, and that's when I saw that man again. He was going down as I was going up, and he saw me. Our eyes met, and he started running backwards up the escalator. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It looked as if he had been looking for me, and now he was running to get close to me again. I started running. I wanted to get back to my family. I wanted safety. There were people all around, but they didn't know what was happening. By some wonderful coincidence, when I got off the escalator, I saw my family there, and I have never been so relieved in my life. I didn't tell them that I thought that I was being chased by some weird guy who must have been at least 10 to 15 years older than me. I don't know why I didn't tell them. I guess I didn't want to cause a fuss. "Can we go home soon?" I said in a weak voice. It was great timing because it felt like they were heading home soon. I didn't want to see that guy. I knew that he must be somewhere on this floor. He could be anywhere, and I was incredibly anxious. Then, I heard a voice from behind as I walked along with my family. "You're lucky you weren't alone." And I guess I am lucky. About 7 or 8 years ago, I was living alone in the Chiba countryside, going back and forth to university. My apartment was on the second floor, and it was tiny, narrow, and dirty, but I liked it at that time. It was really fine for me. I met a guy at uni, and we started dating. It was a good time. About half a year passed, and I was living next door to a good-looking office lady. I noticed one day that someone had left a strange-looking note on the wall on the small window next to her front door. Let me explain. In the hallway of that building, at the top of the stairs, there is a frosted window that belongs to her apartment. At about the head height on the right-hand side, about 70 centimeters by 40 centimeters. My boyfriend said, "What's that about? Maybe we should ask her the next time we see her." I asked her about it, and she said that she didn't know who had put that on her window. She said late one night, she decided to have a little peek through that window, and the second that she looked out the window, a face appeared, and it really freaked her out. It frightened me too. She said that she stays at her boyfriend's apartment most nights now. I mentioned to her that if she ever didn't feel safe, or if anything happened, to knock on the wall and let me know. I told my boyfriend that too, and he said that he would come to help right away. I chatted with her in passing, time to time, and she said things had gotten worse. She was planning on moving out of the apartment block, and eventually she did. Then, things started happening to me. When I was home alone, in times where I would be doing nothing but lying on my bed, I would hear this metallic tapping sound against my door. Since my apartment is tiny, you can easily see the door from the bed, and once I was looking over, I saw the door handle gently turning as if someone was trying to quietly open the door. I didn't know who it was or what was going on. Huh? Keep calm, I told myself, and it was quiet. For some reason I called out, "The door's locked." And I heard heavy thuds against the door that shook the glasses in the kitchen cabinets. Now, I was freaked out. The thudding stopped eventually. Was someone trying to break in? So I called the police, and they offhandedly told me to beef up my security. That doesn't solve the problem though. Something else happened again when I was on my own in there, and I remember that it was the end of January. Someone was trying to open the door, but this time, a lot more violently. My whole body went rigid, and thank God that I locked the door. Somewhere I found the courage to creep over the door. I wanted to get a good look at the person who was doing this, and someone was stood there. It was a guy. He had a bucket hat, pulled way down low to cover his eyes. My skin broke out in goosebumps, and I was terrified. I wanted to get as far away from the door as possible, but that wasn't easy to do in my tiny apartment. I ran to the other side of the room and I called the police again, sobbing uncontrollably just into the phone. "Are they still there? Can you go over to the door and check again? Are they angry, do you think?" the cop said. That really made my blood boil. "Are you for real? Can't you hear the banging?" I tried to keep my composure and not go off on him, and did as he requested. And I checked and he was still there, which sent me into a panic again. Even though there was a police station 5 minutes from my house, the policeman I spoke to told me that it would be out of his jurisdiction, and I pleaded with the guy, and he said that he would send someone to look over my place, and they showed up 40 minutes later. Luckily, I called my boyfriend, and he came from his part-time job, and he arrived long before the police came. He got me on the phone to them and asked the officer, "Does she have to be dead before you come and check it out?" I half smiled at this, but the reality hit home. The person trying to break into my room was long gone. It's true. In Japan, the police won't do a thing until someone dies. I hate the police here. I'm so sorry to say that, but that's how I feel. The third time something happened, my boyfriend was in my apartment with me, thankfully. We were washing dishes in the kitchen and also drinking tea, and he suddenly felt a chill, and I felt cold too. Then we both asked at the same time, "Are you cold?" He then asked me if the window was open. I looked in the direction of the window near my bed and I saw it was open a crack. Then, I saw one human eye staring right at me. We must have stared at each other for about 10 seconds, and I tapped my boyfriend's shoulder, and I was too scared to speak. My boyfriend understood the message and ran towards the window chasing after the weird guy. However, that creep had a mountain bike positioned ready down below my window and then got away. We couldn't have got down the stairs quick enough to chase him, living on the second floor and all, and I saw him speeding away as I looked from the corridor. One of the fences below my window had been broken, which was probably how he was able to climb up the window. By the way, my bathroom is near the door of my apartment, since it's a tiny place like I said before. I always had to make a short naked run to my dressing room across the hall, which makes me think that this is why this guy had broken a fence and fashioned the ledge to stand on and peer at me. Well, it's just my guess anyway. I applied for other apartments immediately after that incident. I didn't have a job though. Also, shortly after this happened, my boyfriend and I broke up. We didn't have a big falling out or anything. I just kind of fizzled out. I was glad that we were able to move on without any hard feelings, to be honest. We decided to split up over coffee one evening. He said that he had to tell me something before we parted ways though. He told me that he thought the stalker who had been messing with me had been doing the same to the woman who lived next door to me. I kind of guessed that already, to be honest. I was joking, trying to lighten the mood by saying, "Well, I lost a boyfriend, but I gained a stalker." And he went deathly quiet. "I was really scared when that guy was staring at us in your room that night. There was something I didn't tell you, but I probably should have told you. When I saw that guy getting on his bike, I noticed a huge knife in his hand. I'm so glad that he was there at that time that the creep came, because who knows what would have happened to me. I was able to move house, and my ex even helped me. He said that I could call him anytime that I was frightened too, but I haven't been scared once in my new place. What was the purpose of that guy messing with me? What did he want? To rob me? Was he a stalker? Or was he planning on doing something a lot worse? I think about it all the time. I don't ever want to be in that neighborhood again. Thinking now, That metallic tapping sound that I heard against the door could have been that knife that my ex mentioned. I don't like to think about that kind of stuff at night. In case you are wondering, the apartment is still there. So, someone was following me home yesterday, and now I don't want to leave the house. I'm a 15-year-old female, and I was walking home from the store yesterday, and I saw a black box car drive past me extremely slow, and the man in the car clearly was watching me. And when he fully passed me, I saw him watching me in his rearview mirror. I thought it was weird, and I slowed down my pace so that I could tell if he was waiting for me or he was just a slow driver. He was still driving extremely slow, but moved a little when he saw two guys riding past on bikes. He then moved to the edge of the short street we were on and then waited there. I was still towards the beginning of the street, so I acted like I forgot something and I turned around to get out of his sight. I waited and kind of peeked out to see if he had left. And when I saw he was gone, I continued walking. I didn't think that it would happen, but I made a mental note that if I saw the car behind me, it meant that he circled back around. After I continued walking, I made 3 turns and was 3 turns away from my house. When I was walking up a little hill and almost at the 4th turn, I looked back and I saw the man at the corner that I had just turned on, letting me know that he circled back around to find me. He sat there watching me continue walking until I got up the little hill and then turned the corner. Then as I had just barely made the last turn and was close to my house, I saw the man's car just turn the corner up the street, straight across from the way I was walking, just waiting there. I pulled out my phone to call my mom and I walked the other way, and he left soon after I pulled out my phone. My mom came out and walked with me back to the house, and I didn't see the car for the rest of the day. But I kept thinking, he knows what neighborhood I stay in. What if he comes back? What if the next time he comes back, I'm out by myself again? What if no one's home to call? What if he sees me leaving and then comes back when I'm the only one home? I'm so scared that he's going to come back and I don't want to go outside. I don't want to show him where I live, especially because I'm home alone very often. I have summer school and I have to go, but I don't want to leave the house in fear that he might be waiting for me. I am constantly looking out the windows to see if I can spot him, especially since if he was at the store that I was at, then he definitely stays somewhere near the neighborhood. Last year, I, an 18-year-old female, was living in a very rural town in the middle of the mountains. Most small western towns only have one road that goes into the big city. Our road in particular was about 50 miles of empty highway, surrounded only by cliffs, fields, and occasionally a farm. And at the very entrance to this road, once you enter the city, is a huge truck stop/gas station that's always packed. My mom and I were going back home after a midnight showing of whatever movie we had decided to see, and as per usual, we stopped to fill up on gas and get a drink for the long drive. As we were leaving, I vaguely noticed a dingy older Jeep pull out the same time that we did, but of course I didn't take much notice of it. It wasn't weird that someone would be leaving the same time as us. As we started down the pitch-black road, the Jeep kept a steady pace behind us. Again, not weird, until it came flying up past us before disappearing behind a hill. Mom and I just scoffed. We were going 60, but when people knew the roads well, they often drive them at close to 100 even at night. Eventually, we came up to the Jeep from before. It was pulled over, but the back half of the vehicle was in the road, and what was clearly a man's arm waving out the window, gesturing for us to pull over. Of course, we pass it. The man flies past us once more and then pulls over again. He does this once more and my mom and I begin to get very nervous. After passing him for the third time, he flies up and begins tailgating us. He's driving so close that we can't see his headlights in the rearview mirror, and he's honking his horn every so often, waving his arm for us to pull over. And he carries on with this for 30 minutes. Mom and I are terrified, and she's white-knuckling the wheel. I'm holding a pocket knife to make myself feel better. I swore at my own mom for the first time that night, begging her, "Don't you freaking dare pull over." If you've ever seen the movie Rest Stop, this is all that was going through my mind. The road is a dead zone for service, so we couldn't call the police or anyone. The picture of us dead, or worse, on the side of the empty road was the only thing that I could think about. But as soon as it had started, it ended. The man slammed on his brakes, he turned around and then went back. And the ride home was silent, and I ended up sleeping in my mom's room out of fear. The next morning, we had a discussion and came to the conclusion that he had seen two lone women traveling at night and thought that we would be easy pickings, which he would have been right. Some people suggest that he had seen us drop money or maybe a receipt at the gas station and wanted to be a good Samaritan. I think that's ridiculous. Nobody following two women home in such an aggressive manner has good intentions. We moved out of town a few months later for unrelated reasons, but just before we did, the same car was reported following a group of 4 men on their way to work. So, maybe he just likes to scare people. Either way, that night was easily one of the scariest of my life. This is one of those stories that honestly causes me a good amount of mental distress, but it's also one of those stories that I need to tell, either to an audience or a therapist, to get it out of my own head. This all happened back in high school. It was actually the second semester of my junior year. I was a bit of a loner back then and had never really had an actual girlfriend or relationship, and I was frequently teased by my friends for it. Like most high school guys, I had my crushes and girls that I wanted to get with, but none of them showed any interest in me. Until I met Cheryl. Cheryl was, in the best way I can think to describe her, the goth girl in our school that no one else screwed with. She had a clique of friends, and the popular kids would talk about her behind her back, but they never said anything to her face. She and I had spoken some before, and she seemed like a pretty okay person as far as previous experiences with her went. Maybe a bit abrasive, but easy to talk to. I'll never know how it initially happened, but someone gave Cheryl my Snapchat name, and I know this because one night, she randomly sent me a snap that was a picture of a dog, and it said something like, "What's up, loser?" I thought it was one of my friends at first, so I responded with a picture of my Xbox controller. I said that I was playing Halo, and asked who it was. I remember the person had their name set to something like Cherry Black instead of their real name. Immediately, she sends me a picture of herself. I was legitimately confused. I had no idea why she was Snapchatting me. I think I replied with something like, "Wow, You must be pretty damn bored to have to talk with me." And then a pic of myself, just in case she thought that I was someone else. Then she replies and says, "No, I actually want to talk to you." We had a decent conversation over Snap until I was too tired to stay up. She threw in her aggressive quips, calling me a loser every once in a while, making jokes at my expense. But honestly, I didn't mind. It wasn't anything my group of childhood friends didn't do, and she wasn't being malicious with it. From there, we actually spoke a few times at school. We sat together at lunch and started sitting by each other during American history, which was the only class we had together. Honestly, I think I was a bit in awe, because she was actually a really cool person, and she became a really good friend over the couple of weeks that we got to know each other. Then one day, I got a text from her that said, "Hey, you're my boyfriend now." I laughed it off and responded with, "Oh? Is there a guy that you're trying to let down easy and you need a stand-in?" I didn't expect it, but she responded with, "No, I'm telling you that you're my boyfriend now and I'm your girlfriend. We're dating now." It was kind of an odd way of doing things, but I also wasn't going to look a gift horse in the mouth. She was telling me that she and I were together, and that was that. Obviously, I thought that this was going to be some kind of messed up prank at first, but when I got to school the next day and saw her, she immediately started to make out with me. And I think it was then that I realized that she was being serious. Again, she was obviously a bit more aggressive with it than I anticipated. But hey, I had a girlfriend, and I was no longer a lonely loser. Things went pretty well for about a week. Nothing crazy happened and I was pretty happy. Then, the first red flag came into the picture. I posted a picture on my Snapchat story of myself and my older sister. It was a completely innocent picture that I mostly posted for family and friends for the fun of it. But about 10 minutes after posting it, I get a text from Cheryl with a screenshot of my Snap story and my sister's face circled in red. Like she loaded the picture into the editor on her phone and drew circles around her. The picture had a text with it that simply said, "Who's she?" I replied, "That's my sister." Then she responds, "What's your sister's name?" I was a bit taken aback about how aggressive she was being about a snap with my sister, but I relented and told her, "Her name is Amanda." And about 5 minutes or so later, she responds with "okay" and a smiley emoji. That same night, I got a random text from my sister that said something to the effect of, "Your girlfriend is so cute. You should have told me that you were with her." I asked how she knew and she responds by telling me that Cheryl had added her on Facebook and messaged her, asking her if she was actually my sister. Obviously, I had a problem with this, so the next day I asked her why she did that. She responds by saying, "I had to make sure that you were serious about being with me. Plus, I'm your girlfriend. I should get to know your sister so we can do stuff together in the future." By the time this had happened, we had been dating for around 8 to 9 days, and she was being that aggressive about a snap with my sister. Again, this was my first girlfriend and I was 17, so while this was a bit odd to me, I just let it go because maybe that's how relationships just were sometimes. Overall, things seemed to go alright for another few weeks. Then, there was one day where I was at lunch and talking with my cousin, Anne. Cheryl walked up to us and basically grabbed me and forced me into kissing her. It was kind of strange, but I didn't do much to stop it. Afterwards, I kind of just laughed at how awkward the whole thing must have been for Anne. I cleared my throat and then said, Anne, This is my girlfriend Cheryl. We've been together for almost a month." Cheryl just kind of stared at her and then reached out to shake her hand, saying hi with a very stale tone. Anne could sense the animosity, so she excused herself, and after which Cheryl shifted her angry stare to me and asked me who Anne was. I explained that she and I had been friends since we were kids, and that her mom married my mom's brother, so she was my cousin by marriage. At first, Cheryl seemed to be accepting of my response. Then after school, I got a text from her that said, "I've been thinking about it, and you're not going to talk to Anne anymore." I didn't respond. Fast forward another week, and Anne, my cousin, that I wasn't supposed to be talking to, got a job at a sandwich shop that I was working at, which is what we had been talking about that morning. My boss was a really cool manager, and I was able to talk him into hiring her, and I told him that I would train her. I'd been there a few months, so I was basically assistant manager without the official title. That night was Anne's first shift, and after he got all of her onboard paperwork done, he told me good luck and to call him if I needed anything, and then left. We were about an hour and a half into the shift, and we were slow, so I decided that I would sit down at one of the tables and talk to Anne about how closing shifts work, how to fill out the cleaning checklist, and just the overall basics. We were talking for about 5 minutes before my phone went off, and it was a text from Cheryl. I opened it, and it literally said, "I thought I told you not to talk to her anymore." Obviously, I was confused. We were at work and working. 1, how did she know I was talking to her? And 2, was she really going to be so controlling that she didn't want me speaking with my own cousin, who was a coworker that I was tasked with training? I told Anne to take a few minutes for a break, grab a drink, and that I would be right back. I step out in the parking lot, and sure enough, Cheryl was sitting in her car facing the restaurant. I went over to her car and she rolled down her window. I asked her what the hell she was doing. She told me that she didn't want me to talk to Anne anymore. I told her that I didn't have a choice and that she was my cousin. After some back and forth and a short argument, I just gave up on the conversation and then went back inside. I thought that this was the end of this annoyance, but sure enough, it wasn't. The next shift that Anne and I worked, which was 2 days after this event, I walked in and my manager asked me to come to his office. I stepped in and I could tell that he was upset with me for something, though I had no idea what it was. I asked him what was going on, and he told me that apparently Cheryl had called him and told him that he needed to fire Anne because she and I weren't supposed to talk to each other. She told him some really messed up and elaborate story about how when we were younger, I had sexually assaulted her, that I was controlling her, basically that I was grooming her since she was about 2 years younger than me. I was appalled at this. I obviously told him that it wasn't true, that I had no idea what the hell she was talking about, and that I would be willing to sit in with Anne and she could tell him that it was all a lie. He honestly seemed uncomfortable about this, which was really bizarre to me. He told me that he had temporarily suspended Anne, but that he hadn't told her the reason, and that she would be coming back in 2 weeks, and that I needed to sort it all out before then. I honestly had no idea what I was supposed to do to sort it out, but I agreed, and I just tried to get through my shift. I completely ignored Cheryl at school the next day. She tried to approach me and I completely shut her down. After class and before I had to be at work, I met up with Anne and I told her about what was happening. She was just as shocked as I was about this and asked what we should do. I basically told her that we needed to just ignore Cheryl and that it would help if she could talk to our boss without me around and explain the whole thing was a lie. And while after this conversation, when I was driving to work, I got a text from Cheryl and it said, "I thought I made it clear that I didn't want you talking to Anne." I'd had enough. I called her. The conversation was quick, but it was pretty much me breaking up with her and telling her to back off and to leave me alone. She then said something that actually gave me chills. She said, "You don't get to break up with me. I don't think you realize that I call the shots." I then told her that she was absolutely nuts and that she needed to get help, and I hung up on her. As I'm sure you can guess, especially with dealing with obsessively crazy people like Cheryl, this is where things started to get worse. That night, while I was working at the sandwich shop, I kept getting weird looks from customers as they walked in, and some customers that were walking toward the door would turn around and leave before they actually entered. Thankfully, one of my friends had decided to come by and get food. He got to the counter and asked what was going on with the woman outside, and I asked what he was talking about. He then proceeded to tell me about probably the most horrific thing that I had ever been told. Apparently, Cheryl was outside and telling people that a rapist worked there and that no one should support a company that employed a rapist. She was literally telling people as they were walking up that I was a rapist and that I was free because no one believed her. She had been standing outside the entire shift and was saying this to people as they walked up, and I couldn't see her because she was just off to the side of the window. I told my friend to hold on and stepped outside, and sure enough, she was standing there. I asked her what she was doing and why she was doing it, and she started to scream. "Hey everyone, this is the rapist. This is the man that should be in jail." I told her to leave and she just smirked at me and said, "Make me." So I did. I called the police and told them that she was trespassing, and I called my manager to tell him what was going on. The police showed up and told her that she needed to leave, and they came in and asked for my information. And I gave it to them, then told me that she was advised to not return to the property or that she would be arrested for trespassing. Of course, just because she wasn't allowed on the property didn't mean that she couldn't continue to do damage. It was a day or two later when my manager once again called me into his office, thinking that I had taken care of the situation with Cheryl. I went in without thinking anything of it, and when I get in, he had my file on his desk and a paycheck in an envelope, as well as the Google review screen upon his computer. He then proceeds to tell me that he was advised by the regional manager that he needed to let me go. I ask him what was going on, and he then shows me the screen. The store's Google rating had been tanked, and there were a significant number of one-star reviews that mentioned that the store was employing a rapist and that no one should support this business until they fired him. Some of them even mentioned me by name, and my boss basically told me that while he didn't really believe the whole thing, it was bad press for the business and that he had no choice. His boss was telling him to let me go to fix this problem. And in the end, I signed the document, gave them my hat and apron, and took my check. I think the hardest part of this was trying to explain to my parents why I had been fired. I had been working there for about a year and at this point, and was probably the only person that had stuck around for so long. So to tell my parents that I was fired honestly hurt me. I had to tell my mom that I was being fired because my ex-girlfriend was claiming that the store was protecting a rapist and that I was the one being called out as such. I, of course, told her that it was all a lie and that Cheryl and I were never even intimate, and that she was trying to just mess with me. Obviously, they weren't really sure what to do, other than possibly call the police and have them sort it out. But honestly, I'm not even sure if she was committing an actual crime. None of the reviews had her name on them, and she left the property when she was asked to do so. And unfortunately, there was a ton of plausible deniability on her side. My other thought was about whether or not she would be willing to lie to the police as well and have me arrested, then drag it all out into a horrible legal battle. In the end, I just told my parents that I was sorry this happened and that I would try to find another job. Obviously, they were telling me not to be sorry, but I honestly felt like this was my fault. I went to bed and just kind of sank into a bit of a low mentally. The next morning, I woke up to my dad coming into my room and asking if there was anything wrong with the car when I drove home from work that night before. We shared the car since he worked an early shift and was home by the time that I needed to go to work. I told him that everything was fine on the way home the night before and asked what he was talking about. He told me to come outside and see. I went with him and come to find out, both tires on the driver's side were flat. I was just standing there and staring at the car, thinking that Cheryl had to have done this. I obviously couldn't prove that it was her, and there was no actual damage to the tires. The air was let out to the valve system, but I had this hunch that this was more of her trying to get to me. I apologized to my dad, but I also told him that I had no idea because all 4 tires were fine when I was driving home the night before. He believed me, but I think my face was showing that I had an idea about what had happened. A few more days go by, and I'm basically just floating through the motions and trying to move forward with things. When out of nowhere, I get called to the guidance counselor's office. I head down and they sit me down. Then the counselor tells me that they got a report that I was suicidal and that I had supposedly told one of my friends that I was going to bring a gun to school in order to do suicide by cop. I, obviously, vehemently denied this. It was nowhere near true, and I would never have ever said anything like that. He then told me that even though I was a good student and even though I was denying it, they would have to send me home for a few days on suspension and that they would have to go through my locker while I was gone, and that I would be required under policy to have my bag searched and walk through the metal detector every morning for a while until they believed that the threat was clear. Once again, I was in a position where I had to explain to my parents what happened since my mom had to leave work to come pick me up from the guidance office. I told her that Cheryl was out to get me and that she was doing everything in her power to ruin my life. I think at first that she was a bit iffy on believing me, but then I literally burst into tears, and I think that may have been what hit at home for her, that something was going on. I told her that while I was dating Cheryl, she was super controlling. I told her about the red flags, about how she flipped out on me for talking to my cousin, and how she freaked out when I had a picture of my sister on Snapchat. I told her about what she did at my work, and how she was the one that filed the complaint with my boss, and most likely, the one that had review bombed the store. I pretty much just unloaded everything on my mom because I had felt like my life had just fallen apart over a girl that I didn't even like before she decided that we were dating about a month and a half ago. Looking back, it was all so stupid that it happened like it did, and it all happened so quickly, going from friends to dating to me feeling like everything was ruined. I could see why I was so upset. My mom ended up telling me to take the time off and that she would talk to the counselor about what was going on and that I should just take this as much as a needed mental health break. I agreed, and I decided that I would just sit at home and do nothing for a few days, just trying to enjoy time for myself. But first, for some reason, something in my mind told me that I needed to message Cheryl and try to get her to leave me alone. So I did. I literally texted her and said, "Look, I know that things got complicated between us and I said things to upset you, but could you please just leave me alone and stop doing all of this? I get your point, you're in control, but please just let me be and move on." She replied pretty quick, but it wasn't a good reply. She said something to the effect of, "Okay, I'll move to Anne then. How's that sound?" I immediately contacted Anne to tell her and she told me that she would keep a lookout. I really didn't know how far Cheryl would take it since, while she hadn't done anything violent or aggressive toward me, she had still managed to really screw things up for me in a relatively short amount of time. And to be safe, I actually called my uncle and explained to him what she had done and that she was now targeting Anne. And honestly, this was probably one of the best things that I could have done. My uncle, my mom's brother and Anne's stepfather, is a bit of a security nerd. He has cameras all over his property and he knows how to protect himself. My warning actually put him on edge and led to what happened next. As expected, Cheryl started to go after Anne and trying to cause her problems. She started by trying to start a fight in school with her by talking shit on me. Anne just told her that she wasn't listening and walked away. When Cheryl tried to follow her, Anne made it to a point to walk toward one of the security guards and stand there, knowing that Cheryl wouldn't do anything. There were a couple of other things that she tried that I honestly cannot remember, but it's not really important. It's more important to know that she spent a few days trying to make Anne's life hell, and Anne wasn't letting it happen. But then, Cheryl made a huge mistake and decided to escalate. The night it all ended, Cheryl had decided that she was going to try to throw a brick through the glass pane in the front door of Anne's house. Unfortunately for Cheryl, when she decided to do this, my uncle was in the garage. And in the garage, my uncle has a screen that connects to all of his security cameras. So he saw her as she was walking up. He was already walking out the side door when Cheryl threw the brick, and he watched her do it, and was less than 20 feet away from her when she did it. My uncle, being the guy he is, immediately drew his gun and told her to get on the ground. He's not a police officer, but he is former military, and he's kind of intimidating that you don't want to mess around with. From what I was told, as soon as she saw the gun in my uncle's hand, she immediately got down on the ground and just stayed there. Apparently, he had scared the hell out of her, and she was terrified that he was going to shoot her. From there, Anne called the police and they came. My uncle told them what had happened and showed them the camera feed, and Cheryl was arrested and subsequently charged. I wish there was more of a happy ending for me, but there wasn't. I didn't get my job back, and I went back to school and went through a month of being searched every single morning. And after that, I moved on and just stuck to myself and those that I knew were close, like Anne. Honestly though, I didn't really mind that things didn't go back to perfect for me. Cheryl got caught doing something that was super illegal, probably got the scare of a lifetime from my uncle, and I honestly hope that this was the point where she decided to turn her life around. I have no idea what happened to her, and I don't want to know. I just hope that Cheryl and I never meet again. For context, I'm a 20-year-old female. I started OnlyFans account over the summer to support myself through school, and things were great until I posted my Amazon wishlist. Amazon doesn't release your address to people who gift you items, but third-party sellers can, and that's where I went wrong. By the way, I'm not trying to promote it here. This is a very frightening story, and I just felt like I should share it. In late July, I got a puppy. One night at around 2 a.m., I took him outside to go to the bathroom. While he was doing his business, I noticed a car parked outside my family home. I saw a figure in the car, and I could tell that they were looking at me, but I couldn't make out their face because it was pitch black outside. Feeling a bit uneasy, I picked up my puppy to take him back inside. And when I started to move, the car parked in my driveway. I sprinted back inside and locked the door, but they never approached my house. The next morning, I went to check the mail and there was an envelope inside to my OF name with $20 in it, but no note. I was currently still at home with my parents, who had no idea about my OnlyFans account, so I didn't mention it to them. A week later, I moved back to my college town to get ready to start school. At this time, I had stopped posting for the time being until I could figure out how they got my address. I've watched enough crime shows to know that there's a possibility that I could be in danger. I lived in a duplex with a gated parking lot for reference. One morning, I was planning on vlogging my trip to Target because I was planning on starting a YouTube channel in the near future since OnlyFans felt unsafe. When I got to my car, it had been ransacked and my vlogging camera was missing. I know, it's my fault for leaving it in my car, but I was using it the night before, and since I live in a gated area, I didn't think that I would be unsafe. It wasn't in plain sight either. I had it hidden in my glove box. I used the camera to film my content, and the SD card that was in there had all of my unreleased photos and videos. I know they stole it just for the SD card. Well, anyway, this is where the story gets weird. There are cameras outside in the parking lot, so we were able to watch this person break into my car and find the camera. And they didn't touch any of the 7 other cars on the lot. They just knew which car was mine, which suggests that they have been watching me for a bit. After they got the camera, they walked around the duplex until stopping near my window. My bedroom faces an outside street, and my blinds are broken, so it's very easy to see in. I have a curtain, but it doesn't really cover my window all the way. This person watched me sleep for an hour or so, and I have no idea why they didn't try to break in, but thank God they didn't. This person then sold the camera to a pawn shop, and since I knew the serial number, the police were able to find it. However, my SD card was missing. I believe the police are still trying to track them down, but I have broken my lease and I moved to a new place. So hopefully that will keep me safe. So to the guy who terrorized me at my home and my apartment and also stole my camera, let's not meet. I am a female, and I would like to tell you about an experience that I had with my dog at that time. English is not my mother language, so I apologize in advance for any mistakes. It's been about 11 years. It was autumn and night, and I decided to take a little walk around our housing estate with my dog Sunny. Sunny is a black and a big Labrador mix. She's a really good and cuddly dog, but she hates other female dogs. She also has a strong protective instinct and always snarls when she doesn't know or doesn't like someone or something. There were no streetlights inside the settlement. The only lighting was always at the house entrances. There was a small park with small playgrounds between the rows of houses. But, as already mentioned, everything was in complete darkness. That's why Sunny was not to be seen, only to be heard now and then when she is chasing a rabbit into the bushes. Then, it goes without saying that she wasn't on a leash. I only need this when the other female dogs are nearby. Sunny listens to my word and always comes when I call her. So, while I strolled comfortably through the dark settlement and froze my ass, Sunny ran happily through the area and the bushes. I always only guessed where she was because I couldn't see her. I only heard her from time to time. At some point, I noticed a small shadow that was whizzing around me. When I looked more closely, I could see that it was Sunny. She ran in large circles around me, and the place where I was and I thought that she was just chasing something. But the circle she drew grew smaller and smaller. She didn't make any noise, and I went on comfortably because I thought she was having her 5 minutes of being crazy. At some point, I didn't see her anymore, but I went on knowing that she would follow me. Then I heard a sound. Footsteps, but they were not my own. I was startled because they were so close behind me so suddenly. So I turned around, but I couldn't see anything thanks to the darkness. I really got nervous and I called for Sunny because it could have been someone with a dog. Sunny didn't come, and I easily panicked. But then, she suddenly stood in front of me out of nowhere and began to growl as violently as she has never done before. My blood froze because it couldn't be a good thing. And then she started walking straight ahead, growling about 2 or 3 meters, stopped, and at that moment, I recognized a figure completely in black. This person was shocked in front of Sunny and didn't move, and Sunny started barking like there was no tomorrow. The person slowly walked backwards towards the lighted house entrances. And then I saw Sunny bare teeth in front of a young man who was wearing a hooded sweater and probably started to experience the same fears as I did when I noticed him. Because as close as he had sneaked up on me, he couldn't have any good in mind. Since it was too dark, however, he could not see Sunny, and she must have surprised him at the right moment. Sunny started to jump, and at the right moment, the guy let out a scream, and you could hear something falling from his hand on the floor. He ran, and my dog followed. After I had released myself from my shocked stiffness, I called out for Sunny as loud as I could. Until after a short time, she was standing in front of me again, wagging her tail. I took her on the leash and then went to where the guy had dropped something. And indeed, there was an arm-thick branch on the floor that he certainly didn't have with him to throw sticks. At home, it gradually dawned on me that my Sunny did not have her 5 minutes when she circled me, but that she had long since noticed and kept an eye on this piece of shit just to protect me. On one hand, that was creepy, but also a relief. And I was and still am so grateful for this great dog, Sunny. Okay, so last year around this time, it all began. Past circumstance. Last year on a Saturday night, shortly after 1 a.m., I heard someone creep up my staircase. I live in a 2-story home on the 2nd floor. I heard the cracking of the wood steps, and I paused my TV show, and I listen. I hear it some more, then I hear a long pause. Then nothing. But then, I hear my doorknob jiggling. I freak out, and I know it's not the woman downstairs because she's gone for the night. I went straight to the door. I have one of those doors where it's half-glass window. Because I live in a tiny town and my upstairs staircase is covered, so technically, no one can see inside unless they are standing right at the door. And even at that, all they can see is part of my doorway into the bedroom and my hallway. Nothing more. So I had the light on at that door inside, and the outside light was off. So when I went to the door, I couldn't see out of it. I couldn't see who was there. When I showed myself at the door, obviously the doorknob stopped jiggling. Because I made my presence known, and they could obviously fully see me because my lights were on. I shut the inside lights off real quick as an attempt to see who was out there. But it took my eyes too long to adjust, and as I shut the lights off, I simultaneously hit the second lock on my door. And that's when the person on the other side of the door started banging on it. I couldn't see who it was, and quite honestly, once the banging had started, I bolted, and so did they. So I tried to look out my windows to catch a glimpse of who it could be, but I couldn't see anything. The exit of the staircase is too close to the house for me to have a full view from the second floor, which is really a shame. So I called the cops, and I filed a report, and all was good in the world. I equipped my home with a wasp spray hidden in every corner. I did develop major anxiety over it though. Like major anxiety. I had never ever been afraid to live alone before this, but I have worked through it for the most part and have gotten better since this was last year. I even got a camera that I have at my door that streams to an app on my phone. Ongoing minor issues. In the last couple of months, I have been having issues though. I park in the little lot across the street. The little lot belongs to the church that I live next to. However, I am allowed to park there. I keep finding the sides of my license plates completely bent outwards at a 90-degree angle every morning. I know this because I put them back in place every day, so the plates are flat because you can't drive around with your plates like that. And pretty much every day of the week, I go outside to find my plates bent back. I know it's not the wind, and I know it doesn't happen while I'm driving because I check. My dad, however, has convinced me that it could be the car wash. I get my car washed at least once a week or two, and it's the kind where you just pay a machine and sit in your car. So I just pushed it off. But then recently, I came home to find 3 things on a little shelf that I keep outside my door. 2 small crystal bowls and a little flower pot with a golden retriever on it. At first I thought, my sister or maybe my grandma probably just left it for me. I texted them about it, and they both said no, that they didn't leave anything. They both live on my block, so I thought it would be probable for them to just do that. But then, both of them said that it wasn't them. Then, my next thought would be that it's my mom. See, anytime my mom gets me stuff, she leaves it on her front sunroom, which she calls her porch. So, she will always text me a pic of what she got me and say, "It's here on the porch. Get it when you stop by next, okay?" In the next year and a half that I've lived in this apartment, she has never left something on my porch. Also, my camera was dead, so I texted her about it and she didn't answer, which is really like her. If it doesn't pertain to her, she doesn't answer. Also, I'm slightly confused about the golden retriever planter because everyone knows that I'm a cat person, and that's what everyone who knows me gets me. What happened tonight? Tonight, at 1:19 a.m., I was in my bedroom texting my sister when I heard banging on my door again. The lady who lives downstairs is gone for the night again. This exact same thing happened a year ago too. A Saturday night, right after 1 a.m. All the lights in my apartment were on, so they knew that I was home. If they wanted to break in, they could have. If they wanted my valuables, they have 60 hours out of the week every single week this last year to do so. So no, whoever is messing with me just wants to mess with me. I didn't know what to do, and my phone was on the other side of the apartment, and I couldn't get to it without going past the door. So I told my sister through text messaging on my laptop, and she called the cops for me. They arrived and I knew because I saw them searching the property with their flashlights, and I met them at the door. I filed a report and I noped out of there, and now I'm sleeping at my sister's house for the night. But this is seriously freaking me out. Someone is messing with me in a very serious way. They know that I'm home, they know when I'm up, and they know the woman who lives downstairs is gone. They know the camera isn't charged, and coincidentally, these things keep happening when my camera is in charge, which takes hours to do, and I am so paranoid of leaving something charged while I'm asleep or not at home. I don't have any enemies in this area, and I don't really know anyone in this town except for a co-worker or two, my landlord, and my family, who is really new to the area as well. I don't have any ex-boyfriends that's trying to scare me, and I haven't fought with anyone who is trying to get revenge on me. But I should mention that about 9 or 10 years ago, I did have a bit of a stalker situation, in which a 55-year-old man who lived adjacent to my job, he came in every day for a year. We never spoke directly or had a conversation. He would leave me notes on my car, and the first one he left me was a 5-page letter speaking about how compatible we were with one another. He mentioned things in the letter that I would speak about with other customers in regards to our compatibility. He even mentioned that he believes that he could sexually please me. Something along the lines of how I am a special person and he has what it takes, and it's the kind of special that most people don't have what it takes. He would leave me crystal antique hearts on my car. Well, anyways, I got a restraining order on him, and he was no longer allowed to enter my job. He would occasionally stare at me through the cracks in his blinds, and that was about it. I moved out of the state and nothing ever happened of it. So, that could be a possibility too. This happened a few years ago when I was bartending in college. I was coming home down a stretch of divided highway at around 3 a.m. when I noticed a car heading towards me in the wrong lane. I doubted myself at first and thought the car was on the other side of the highway, but sure enough, a white Ford sedan passed me at a really high speed. It's worth noting for later that I also drive a white Ford sedan. I was used to drunk or idiot drivers in the middle of the night, so I just pulled to the side of the road and let him pass me. I had a moment of clarity and thought to call the police, thinking that this person could hurt themselves or somebody else. The dispatcher answered, and after telling them which road or exit mile marker I was at, they told me that they would send a car. The state police station was only a few exits away, so I figured that they would send somebody and I would just drive home. As I headed back onto the highway, I noticed some lights a few miles behind me. I live in a more rural part of southeastern Pennsylvania, and traffic at 3 a.m. tends to be truckers or cops. The car gained on me as I was getting up to speed, so I stayed in the right lane and waited to be passed. Instead, they flipped on their high beams, making it uncomfortable to drive, and rode my tailgate. At this point, I thought I was going to be pulled over by the police. I drove a white Ford sedan and had just called about a different white Ford sedan, so I grabbed my registration from my glove box. But suddenly, the car behind me audibly slammed on their brakes and stopped in the middle of the highway. They must have shut off their car because the lights went out and I saw what looked like the same Ford sedan from earlier. But still, I thought this may have been a police car. They had a roof rack, and it could have looked like I was reaching for a gun in my glove box. I panicked, and I called 911 for the second time, and I asked the dispatcher if they had sent a cruiser to investigate. The dispatcher was a little curt with me and assured me that they sent somebody out. Dispatcher said, "We have sent the trooper out to find the car, sir," they said. "I only ask because somebody is following me and they're acting weird. It could be a cop and I think I freaked them out by getting my registration," I answered. "Are you pulled over?" they asked. No, but they didn't turn on their lights. And the dispatcher once again told me, let me try to get the trooper we sent out. As he was talking, the car again sped towards me and stopped inches from my bumper. Again, their high beams were on, and again, they slammed on their brakes. I told the dispatcher, I'm pretty sure this is not the police behind me. And the car sped to my bumper again and turned their high beams on, this time laying on the horn. Hearing this, the dispatcher asked me what was happening. They said, What's happening? Did you honk? No, that's the car behind me. I don't think it's a cop. I'll try to get the trooper again, but I don't think that's them behind you, the dispatcher said. For some reason, this was what shook me. Before that, I was thinking that I would get pulled over and maybe get a ticket. Up until then, I was going to the speed limit and trying to avoid getting pulled over. I told the dispatcher, I don't care if I get pulled over. I'm speeding, and if they get their lights on, then I'll pull over. I started to accelerate, and the person behind me just kept up with me. The speed limit was 55, and they kept on my bumper the entire time, but this time they were swerving. I tried to signal for an exit and then bail on it, but they followed. And at the next exit, I took the off-ramp and then continued onto the on-ramp, and the car behind me followed the whole time. I thought about trying to go to Wawa, but the dispatcher and I thought that it would be unsafe. He was calm and talking to another person, trying to send police to me. The other person, maybe a supervisor, asked if I could drive to a state police station. Realizing that I was one exit away, I told him that I was coming there, and he said that he would have the troopers meet me outside. As I pulled off to the exit, the car followed me. I blew a few red lights trying to get to the police station, and the car tried to pull into the other lane to pass me or to pull up alongside me. Once the police station was in view, I put on my turn signal, and the car slammed on its brakes again. They turned off their lights and then turned into a parking lot. The story ends kinda anticlimactically as I pulled into the police station and met the troopers. Two of them went to find the car, and I stayed with the third trooper. I thanked the dispatcher and her supervisor, and the state trooper escorted me home after taking a statement from me. I was never called to follow up or testify, so I can only assume that the person didn't get caught. When I was in 8th and 10th grade, I was extremely involved in this small building server. The average age was probably 15 to 17, and I joined a group of builders and I Skyped with them every weekend for hours. We all became close fast and trusted each other enough that we followed each other on Instagram. I became particularly close with one of the builders in my friend group named Peter. Peter was in the same grade as me, and we ended up texting quite a lot. I heard rumors that Peter might have a crush on me. He denied them, which I found laughable because it was the internet and I just brushed it off. Everything was fine for a while until something began to feel off when I talked to him. I was starting to constantly catch him telling small lies. This bothered me, so I figured that it was time to distance myself from Peter, and I stopped talking to him. Cut to a few months later of no contact, and Peter out of the blue texts me that he was going to be possibly transferring to my high school so he can get an in-state tuition for college. Peter's plan is to somehow live completely alone and support himself while in high school. My stomach drops when I read the text and I know this feels very, very off. I try to be calm, and I tell him that his plan is crazy. I tell him that it's oddly convenient that he chose my random suburb. Peter insists that his plan will work and it's just a coincidence that he is going to my high school. I'm trying to call Peter's bluff and hoping that he is just screwing with me because I cut him off. Peter says that he bought the plane tickets already and is going to stay in my town and visit some high schools in the area. Fear washes over me, and I realize that Peter definitely has some very unhealthy attachment to me. Peter was not bluffing. To my horror, he posts a picture on Snapchat at the airport. Peter asked to meet up while he's there, and I of course decline. Later, I see on his Snapchat story that he is taking a tour of my high school. Peter is taking lots of videos and pictures, probably hoping that I can see. Luckily, I am stuck at home with pneumonia. I spent the next few days on edge, and I was afraid that he was going to ring my doorbell at any moment. Luckily, he was not smart enough to find where I live, and he flies home and does not follow his plan. The baffling part was, none of my old group on the Minecraft server thought that he was doing anything creepy. I felt like I was going crazy for thinking that this was weird. I thought my rejection for this meetup would be the end of it. But about 2 years later, and I just committed to my dream college, I still, stupidly, followed Peter on social media because I wanted some warning if he came to my area. And once again, Peter did. I see him posting in front of the library at my college with a caption saying, "Transferring here is definitely the move." And cut to a few months later, Peter finds out that I had a boyfriend and directly contacts me for the first time in 2 years. He starts asking strange questions like, "Well, will he protect you?" I shouldn't have answered, but for some reason I did. I finally blocked him and I stopped following him on social media out of fear. He has not tried to contact me since. I definitely made some mistakes because I was young and scared, and I had others telling me that it was not a big deal. So Peter, let's not meet.
Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.